This conference will now be recorded.
Welcome to the program. My name is Marty Schenkman, and this is a presentation on behalf of the Myositis Association. We're going to talk about advanced care planning, home care support, medical directives, aging. It's going to be a discussion of practical steps that you can take to help yourself or a loved one to address essential estate, financial, and other planning. We're going to talk about legal documents that you really must have, as well as a lot of practical steps that will help you make your life easier and safer. Keep in mind that none of the information discussed is the giving of professional advice. You need to consult your own professional advisors to do so. Let me make a general comment about that. The laws in every state are very different, so it would be terribly mistaken for you to assume that anything that I say assuredly works in your state. There's little nuances and sometimes significant differences between state law. Now, practically speaking, the right advice for all the planning I'm talking about, if you can afford it, is to hire an attorney and accountant and a financial advisor and have a collaborative team help you address all the planning we're doing. From a practical perspective, many people can't afford that, and it's just not feasible for them to do so. If you cannot afford an attorney and accountant and a financial advisor, and you're going to do some of this on your own, just be very careful when you go to some of the online sources. And here's the concern that I have. You can go to an online website, I won't mention any by name, and actually get a fairly good quality, it seems, legal document. The problem is that you're not required to take any training, education, or get any background. Given that, how can you go and prepare a legal document using the online services, not really having any understanding? So if you're going to go to an online service to prepare a power of attorney, which we'll talk about, spend an hour, 2 hours, and go through watching videos online and at least try to get some background on what the document is and what the purpose is. Again, if you can't afford to hire an attorney, at least play it safe and get some background. The second practical step, if you're going to have to do this stuff on your own or online, is don't do it alone. With Zoom and WebEx and FaceTime and all the technology that we have readily available today, find family and friends and do it as a group. If you get 3 or 4 people and you all help each other prepare documents or do some of the planning that you need to do that we're going to talk about, you have sounding boards. And one of the reasons that's very important, first, everyone's going to understand something different. Remember the old adage, 2 heads are better than 1. Well, 4 are probably better than 2. But more important, it's very hard for any of us to be objective about our own planning situation. So if you have friends and family that you're doing the planning with, it's much easier for them to be honest and objective about your situation, perhaps, than it is for you. So hopefully this general disclaimer, as I've elaborated on it, will help you take proactive steps. And here's the real bottom line. If you don't take steps today to help yourself, it's only going to be more difficult in the future. And if you don't take steps before a bad event occurs, the damage could be irreparable. So use this in a positive vein to optimistically and proactively proceed. And that's really what we're going to talk about. I'm not going to belabor some of the symptoms or conditions that you may be facing or challenging, but the point is many of these could make it difficult for you to handle at some point if they're significant enough, dealing with a lot of your financial matters. And obviously, if you're struggling with fatigue and muscle weakness or pain, the more you simplify and streamline all your legal, tax, and financial matters, the easier it's going to be. And we're going to give you a lot of practical suggestions how to do that. And by the way, these are the same suggestions with minor tweaks that I would make for anybody and everybody. And worst case is if you spend all the time and effort doing all the things I'm going to talk about for the next 30 minutes or so, and then you find that your condition doesn't worsen and you're able to take care of all these matters on your own, you still have a great plan. So there's really no reason not to do everything we're going to talk about. These are the objectives of the program and what we're going to try to teach you about. Again, practical tips to make your life easier and safer from a financial, legal, and estate planning perspective. We're going to talk about all the key documents, but more than documents. Many people think that when of the word estate planning, oh gee, I need a will. And many people, when they think of financial planning, think they need to invest in the stock market. Both of those may be in part true, but they're very small part of the overall picture. And we're going to try to paint more of a big picture, because if you don't do a broad, holistic plan, you're not going to get the results that you want to protect yourself and your loved ones. I'm going to give you what I think is a great but very unusual perspective on defining what estate and financial planning is. It's really about achieving peace of mind for you and your loved ones, however you define that. Having legal documents in a drawer could be viewed as an estate plan, but if it doesn't address your specific needs, it's kind of pointless. And if you have legal documents in a drawer and nobody knows about them, it's kind of pointless. So we're going to talk about what those things mean and what you can do. And again, and this is really, really critical, and this is why you have to be very careful whether you hire a team of professional advisors or do this yourself online with the little safeguards that I've encouraged you to consider. You have to define this process for yourself. You have to define your goals. Everyone listening to this has different family and personal situations, different health considerations, and if you try to assume that something you read or something a professional tells you is the standard approach, there is no standard approach. You got to do what works for you. So everything I'm telling you in this program, make sure you interpret it and apply it for you. And you, if you are doing this with 3 or 4 friends or family members, as we talked about earlier, every one of you may have different unique circumstances. You must address your circumstances. Third bullet point is really important, and I want to stress this. When somebody hears the word estate planning, they immediately think of morbid things. Oh my, dying, dying, dying. No, estate planning is about life. It's about protecting you. And an integrated, holistic estate and financial plan is what everybody needs to make their life more financially secure. For the wealthy, tax planning is a significant issue. That may or may not apply to you, but it's not only about tax planning. And frankly, too often people that are very wealthy get so hyper-focused on tax issues that they forget all the practical stuff we're going to talk about. So whether you're uber wealthy or struggling, hopefully all these comments apply to you and will help you. So again, the bottom bullet point on the slide, just to reemphasize, what estate and financial planning has to be defined by you, and it has to be defined for what works for you. So be very careful reading generic statements anywhere. Now, you got to tailor everything to meet your personal situation. In terms of myositis, there's different types, different impact, different experiences by different people of what it means to them now, and it may change in the future. So you have to make sure you address those issues. If you have other health issues, which many people do, those need to be addressed. You have to be honest and assess your financial situation and make sure you address what you need for you. You have to be practical. When I say conservative, what I mean by that is you have to take action now, today. You have to start planning and taking the steps that we're going to talk about and plan ahead. It's not about waiting for an issue and then saying, oh my, now what do I do? Because often by then, when the emergency or the bad situation occurs, it can be too late. There's some unique situations, the COVID environment we're in now. I'll mention some of those so it's current and topical. I don't want to belabor those because hopefully this video will be relevant for people planning in years to come as well. The financial impact needs to be considered of COVID, of your health condition, and so on. What type of medical costs might you incur now and in the future? Too often people that are healthy and in their 50s or 60s that have limited or no material health issues neglect to think about what that may mean. My wife was diagnosed in her 40s with multiple sclerosis and had to stop working more than a decade before she anticipated. So that's something that can affect any of us. You know, we don't know what the future brings, and that's why planning ahead and planning for the proverbial what ifs is really critical. So one of the first steps is you have to have a financial plan. A financial plan is the foundation of any estate plan. A financial plan is the foundation for aging and planning to address not only issues of aging, but your home and how you live in it and everything else. If your finances don't permit you to stay in your home because you haven't planned, that's a real issue. So the bottom line for everybody, and this is even for wealthy people, I've seen some incredibly wealthy people have such a costly lifestyle expense that they've burned through their money and decimated the financial security they could have had. So a lot of this is relative. You need to have a budget and financial plan. For people that think they're wealthy, a budget seems to be a four-letter word. It's not. It's absolutely critical for anybody wherever you are on the wealth spectrum. Unless you're absolutely so incredibly wealthy that you can't spend too much and your future cash flows are assured, which I don't know that that applies to very many people anywhere, you have to have a budget and a financial plan. If you can afford it, get professional help, and it's not that costly. There are large, well-known financial investment firms that, especially because of the incredible technology that's available, that can offer really great planning services for little or no cost. So don't turn down getting a professional if you can, and don't think it's too costly. It may not be. If you don't have the wherewithal and you can't afford professional help, and again, you probably can, there's incredible online resources. The key is using them. And if you simply automate your checkbook and your bill paying and your assets and get everything into a computerized program, it's incredible the data that you can project. We automated decades ago, and we can prepare an incredibly accurate budget in an hour or so of work, which is invaluable to our personal planning, and you should do that too. You can get financial models of what your current financial situation looks like, and that's ultimately what everybody should have, whether you do it on your own with professional help, which is preferred, or in some combination, which may be a very practical solution. What does that mean? It means putting together a real budget, not a fantasy of what you can afford to spend, but what you're actually spending, building in some uncertainties for future medical costs, which can be costly and unknown, projecting forward based on the savings that you have, the Social Security you may get, and taking a look at what your financial picture looks like 5, 10, and 20 and 30 years out. You want to go out far enough to exceed what you're likely, beyond your likely life expectancy. You probably want to go to 80, 90% of life expectancy. So for many people, that may be going out to age 85. That's not even fair anymore. It used to be, but perhaps 95, I meant to say. And seeing how your finances look. By getting that kind of comprehensive approach, it really gives you a handle on what you can afford. So if you're planning on, for example, aging in place in your home and you want to do home modifications to make your home easier to get around, to address some of your health issues, you need to plan for that. And it's much safer and financially much better to plan ahead and face the realities you have to deal with. If it turns out from those financial forecasts that it appears that you may have financial issues in 10 or 20 years, sometimes fairly modest cutback on current lifestyle expenses and discretionary expenses that may not even seem material, compounded over decades, can have a huge impact. If you've been sitting on CDs for too many years and not investing, and I'm not in any way saying today's the day to invest in the stock market, you need to have a more robust investment plan. And you need to look down the road with it. COVID has changed a lot. The uncertainties in the stock market are disconcerting. The incredible volatility is disconcerting, but that doesn't mean you can't plan. It means you need a plan more than ever. So that's really critical. And the final point is do what if assumptions. So, you know, if you feel that you can work for the next 15 years despite health issues or despite what COVID may have done to the economy, model that out. But then go back and realistically say, if work is getting too difficult, or if COVID or the economic downturn may reduce my wages, my salary, my profits for my business, model that too. You want to model out some what ifs to see what things look like. You want to make sure your expenses are at a level where you can withstand some of the impact. You've all probably heard the really disturbing, scary statistics, and I don't remember them by heart, but that the average American has, a very such limited resources that they can't withstand $1,000 or $2,000 emergency expense. You want to build savings, even if it means sacrificing within reason current lifestyles, so that you have a reserve for future uncertainties, especially with health issues. The next two slides, it's not really, or this slide is not really my area of expertise, but I just felt it had to be mentioned very briefly in the program. Many people have incredible misconceptions about long-term care. A large number of people do end up needing skilled home care or nursing care at some point. Assuming Medicare will pay for these costs is incorrect. It will not pay for long-term care. We don't have a program for that. The costs of this are astronomical. If you can afford and it makes sense to get long-term care insurance, you should look into it. Even if you can't get it because of your health issues or you can't afford it, it's worth applying just to learn and get the education you get from what the process is about. You need to plan to have savings to supplement what you need. If you have inadequate savings, Medicaid type planning may be something that you want to think about. But it has to be part of everybody's planning considerations. Next slide. This may sound unreasonable or unnecessary for modest wealth people. It's absolutely essential for wealthy people, but frankly, it's important for everyone. An investment policy statement is really just a statement that you document how you want your money invested. Why is that important? If you have health issues or a loved one does, as you age, it becomes more likely that you'll have a health challenge where somebody's going to have to step in as, let's say, an agent under a power of attorney or a successor trustee under a revocable trust and help manage your finances. The more information you create today, the better the roadmap that you create today, the game plan, the easier it will be for that person to carry out what you want. So if you have a statement of how you want your investments handled, and this should come out of the financial planning that we talked about before, it should not exist in isolation or just pop out of your head. It should be based on the financial targets that you have. So you may need more or less risk in the stock market based on what your financial models show. But if you document this and somebody has to step in and take care of your investments, they'll know what you want done. There's also another aspect to this. Let's say you have 4 kids and you name daughter number 2 to be your agent because you feel she's going to do the best job. If you have documented what you want her to do in terms of expenses, which you have from the model that we talked about, the budget, right? So she knows what your expenses are because you've documented a budget every year. If you document how you want things invested, it gives her security because then the other kids are in a more difficult position to give her a hard time or challenge what she's done because she can point to the records you've created. So again, creating an investment policy statement is important. Now, for everybody as you age, and even if, and view this in a positive way, and let's leave aside COVID, if you spend time traveling after you retire as you get older, the more you automate everything, the easier and safer it is. COVID has kind of jump-started or pushed all of this way ahead. Everybody's trying to be paperless, electronic, cloud-based to minimize the need to deal with touching things because of the worries about contracting or catching the virus from mail, from dealing with interactions with people. You don't want to go to the post office if you can minimize it because of COVID. But that's ultimately where you want to be anyhow. You want everything on autopilot. If you're having challenges from your health issues and it's difficult to pay bills or deal with some of the financial matters, if you're having fatigue, it's all the easier to have everything automated. Automated doesn't mean ignoring it. It means getting everything that can be automated as possible. As you get older, your health conditions worsen. If somebody is a family member, friend, or professional is going to help you with bill paying and other things, the more automated you are, the more efficient and safer that can be. So the goal is to minimize paperwork. I can tell you that we have every bill that can be auto paid is on auto pay. Bills that can be auto paid to credit cards is our first preference, because then you have some of the security that the different credit card companies offer in terms of monitoring for fraud and so on. Anything that won't auto bill, any vendor, utility company that won't auto bill to our credit card, we have auto pay out of our checking account. And then what that's done is eliminated dramatically the paper bills that we need to access or find by things being auto billed if we're not feeling well or we're traveling in a positive light, because again, we want to be upbeat. This is not about sad, depressing stuff. It's about making the most of your life. Everything's taken care of. Now, you should go online and monitor at least weekly all your accounts, and you should have the least number of accounts that you absolutely need to make that simpler and safer, to make sure that things are being handled correctly. And if there's an error, you can follow up. But it's a lot less work to go on weekly and check that auto bills are being handled correctly and that the numbers make sense than it is to actually physically receive mail, open the mail, pay the bill with the check, keep records, and so on and so forth. Deposits should be auto deposited. Payroll, Social Security, anything you can. If it's automatically deposited, none of that stuff ends up in your mailbox. Now, another important point of all this, identity theft is a huge issue in the current environment, and it's gotten worse and worse over time. Elder financial abuse, huge issue. And it's elder financial abuse, the term bothers me because it's not the elderly only that are abused, it's anybody that has any type of weakness or infirmity. So if you're struggling because of some of your health issues, to the extent you get everything on autopilot, there's less opportunity for somebody to abuse or take advantage of you. If you have literally no bills or checks coming to your mailbox, there's nothing for somebody to pilfer, because that's one of the common ways that's been done. Next slide is a really simple step, but do it if you haven't. Dump your wallet on a table. Take a photograph of the front and back of every single item in every credit card, driver's license, everything in your wallet. Save them on your phone. Make sure your phone has password protection. Then upload it all to your laptop. Make sure that your laptop is encrypted and backed up to the cloud. This way, if there's ever an emergency, you lose your wallet, something happens, you got all your records to follow up on it. That's a really important practical step, and we're going to have others of these. Now, let's take a minute and walk you through the estate planning documents that you need. Now, the documents listed here, you don't need necessarily all of them, but let's suffice to say most people that are adults 18 and over need most of these documents. And by the way, if you have an elderly parent or aunt, uncle, family member you're caring for or helping, if you have college-age kids that are home because of COVID, they need a lot of these documents too. And it doesn't have to be a costly, involved process, but not having a document and not designating people to take steps if something happens is a big mistake. It could create incredible legal costs and hassles, and you can avoid it with regular documents. Now, let me define what a will is real quick. A will is a document that designates guardians, executors, and distributes your assets when you die. A pour over will is a will that does the same thing, but instead of distributing your assets, it pours them or distributes them to what's called a revocable trust. A revocable trust is a legal contract between you and the trustee, which could be you initially, and you can transfer assets to it today. And if you're incapacitated, if you're sick, the revocable trust, you can name a co-trustee who can help you take care of financial matters, which is something that can make it much easier if you're not feeling well. And then if you're really incapacitated, the successor trustee can manage your assets for you. And then when you die, the revocable trust distributes assets. Revocable trusts are an incredibly powerful planning tool, and I suggest you consider them. You have to be very careful because the way they're talked about on the internet and in most people's minds is there a way to avoid the evils of the probate process, which is what happens when you die and your will has to get admitted to a surrogate's court. In many places, probate is not that big of a deal. But in all events, a revocable trust, if properly done, funded, proper people, reasonable people named, appropriate provisions, It's a very powerful tool to help you manage your assets, not only if you're fully disabled, but as you start to age or if your health issues make it difficult to manage your finances and legal matters. So a revocable trust is a very powerful tool. A power of attorney is a document that you name an agent to take care of legal, tax, and financial matters for you. If you have a robust revocable trust, you still need a power of attorney because you can't transfer all assets into the revocable trust. Retirement accounts can't go into revocable trust. For example, if you have a lawsuit or a claim, that may not be transferable to your revocable trust, and especially future claims can't. So you still need a power of attorney, especially if you're dealing with health issues, you want a power of attorney. But I prefer, if you can afford and you can do it, to have a revocable trust as the core of the plan. It makes the will and the power of attorney less significant, but you still need them. Healthcare proxy is a document in which you name an agent to make medical decisions for you if you can't. And obviously, if you have existing health conditions, you want somebody that understands and is sensitive to your health conditions. A living will is a statement of your healthcare wishes. It really is the guidance for the agent you name under your healthcare proxy. If you have religious or other concerns, personal preferences, they all should be reflected in the living will. A HIPAA release is a document that you authorize a named agent to have access to your private or personal health information. The purpose of that is to enable somebody to speak and communicate with your physicians. And we're going to skip the pulse. Now, technology can help with all this. If you, I've talked earlier about using web-based software to help create documents and how to try to do that a little safer. If you have that process, you can do web meetings with family and friends. If you have an attorney, a financial advisor, and other professionals, which is certainly the preferred approach if you can afford it, you can do meetings by web, which can reduce the cost and minimize your risk for contracting COVID and so on. And by the way, think of technology in new and novel ways. So for example, if you're having a web meeting with your attorney, maybe you want to record it so you can later go back and play it back. Most web services will transcribe a web meeting for free or very modest cost, and there's other online web services that Temi, Scribby, and a whole bunch of them that for insignificant dollars will transcribe a fairly long web meeting. If you get a transcript of your meeting, it's a great way for you to document what you talked about so you can go back and review it at your leisure. Next slide. This is the legal equivalent of the wallet dump. Get copies of every key legal document you have. Make sure they're scanned electronically as PDFs, that they're saved on your laptop in a secure environment, meaning password protected, encrypted, and that they're all backed up to a cloud-based portal. You can get there's a whole range of cloud-based portals that are really very inexpensive. You don't want to have all your confidential, critical legal documents and financial data on your laptop and not have it backed up. So you want to do that. My experience as an estate planning attorney is the vast, vast majority of people that come to me don't have their legal documents and other key records organized. They can't find them. They're missing them. And most advisors, for reasons I don't understand, don't really seem to help people organize all their legal documents. So just do it. It's absolutely vital that if you have an emergency, your loved ones, your agents, the people you name to help you, know where to find these documents and have copies of them. If you're going to go to professional advisors, why are you paying somebody to organize documents if you can do it on your own? And they can't organize what you don't give them. So take the proverbial legal bull by the horns, do a legal document dump, get all your documents in one place, saved as PDFs, label them intelligently so it's really easy for people to understand what they are, and organize them. Review the ownership of assets. People often neglect to do it. It's vital. Who owns what? How's it owned? So if I have an account that's in just my name, Marty Schenkman, if I die or I'm incapacitated, the account title doesn't permit anybody to act on that account. If I have my son Jonathan or my wife Patty as a co-owner, that may give them authority to act. But is that really what you want? If you have a revocable trust, shouldn't those assets, excluding IRAs, shouldn't those assets be in the name of the revocable trust? Then you don't need these other accounts. Too often people rely on pay on death or transfer on death or in trust for type accounts, because when they go to a bank or brokerage firm, the clerk tells them that that'll avoid the evils of probate, but it also avoids all the planning that you've done in your will and your revocable trust. Joint accounts can be a helpful way to let somebody sign your account, but is that really what you want? Because when you die, now those assets go to them. I can't tell you how many times over the decades of practice I've seen somebody that names a child as a joint owner of an account because they think that's how the child can help pay bills or do something for them. But then when they die, whatever money's left in that account goes to that child and cuts out everyone else. If that's not your plan, think, is that really what you want? So there's better options. Write a letter of instruction. Everybody on this call has personal wishes and preferences. Write a letter to instruct people what you want done. If you have minor children, how do you want them raised? What do you want for them? Writing a letter is absolutely critical to put feelings on all these documents. You don't want tons of personal stuff integrated into the legal documents. One, because it may not be precise, so it could be a problem if circumstances change. You're going to have to pay an attorney to do all that. And a lot of the stuff, like the color, the details, the personal flavor, if you will, doesn't really belong in legal documents in many cases. The legal documents have to carry out what you want, but a letter of instruction is really important. And it's also something that you can revise with no cost anytime things change. In COVID, you have to look into signing electronically if it's difficult for you to get around. If you have underlying health conditions and you're worried about contracting the virus, see what you can do electronically. Many states, but not all, have enacted emergency legislation which can permit you to sign things remotely and so on and so forth. Hopefully, as a result of COVID, the legal profession and the state legislatures will enact permanent legislation that makes real remote notarization, witnessing and signing, and e-signatures valid on legal documents. Just be very careful, because right now it's not necessarily valid in all states, and there's a lot of criteria and formalities that you may have to meet. What we're going to do now is transition and go through the documents. I've already talked about each of them, so we're just going to elaborate briefly. But this will give you a checklist of many of the documents that you want to have in your legal portfolio, if you will, and to protect yourself. So a durable power of attorney is one of the key documents. It's a document, durable means even if you're incapacitated, the validity of the document won't change. That's just a historical oddity that when you became disabled at common law, the power of attorney in which you designated an agent to take care of financial and tax and legal matters would become void. So you want to make sure that the document has the right language in it to work in your state. And it may require nothing more than a sentence that says, this power shall remain valid despite later incapacity. But you need the right lingo from each state law, and there could be some differences from state to state. But everybody on this call, if you're an adult, you need a power of attorney. You need to review your power if you have one. Are the people that you named still appropriate? Should things change? How old is the document? This is something a lot of lay people don't realize, but even if legally a document's valid, once a document get kind of old, 10 years for sure, banks and other people start to get more concerned. Is this valid? Is this still what the person wanted? So you want to update your documents periodically anyhow, just so that they have reasonably fresh dates. I would say minimum once every 10 years. Also, laws change constantly, and any document that's even probably 3 to 5 years old warrants review. Quick COVID comment. A lot of people set up powers of attorney that are springing. It only becomes effective when I'm disabled. First, the mechanism for determining disability is usually in many documents is having a letter from 2 different physicians. Is that something that's even feasible, practical to do during COVID? Also, if you're living with myositis, if it's difficult for you to deal with these issues now and it could be worse in the future, I mean, how do you define disability? How do you demarcate it? You may want help today. It may be easier today for somebody to go to the bank and physically transact transactions for you but you may not be disabled. Well, if your power only is effective when you're disabled, then the agent can't help you today, and it may make your life easier. So that sort of differentiation of only having it effective on disability just may not be not only appropriate in COVID, it may not be what you want given your health status. So you may want to revise the document and have it effective immediately, but make sure you trust who you're giving that power to. Here are some other issues and things you may want to think about with powers. We can't go through all of this today, but hopefully the slide deck will give you some more points to consider. The next document, which again, we've already defined each of these, is a healthcare proxy in which you name an agent to make medical decisions for you. You want to make sure that people are appropriate. How old is the document? Be careful against blanket prohibitions in the health proxy or living will that could be a mistake. You may want to authorize, especially during COVID, remote decision making. Most documents, no documents had this before because we never dealt with a situation like COVID, but why not permit your agent to make a medical decision and communicate it to your medical providers via FaceTime or Skype or Zoom or something like that, and you need to hold harmless the medical providers for relying on that. Now, let's interject another step here, practical, non-legal. Create an emergency envelope. Get a nice big envelope, probably one of those like 8x10 brown envelopes, and get a physical copy of all your medical documents, your HIPAA release, health proxy, living will, and copies of any relevant medical records, describing your myositis and other health issues. Make a list up of all the medications that you're taking. Include vitamins, because that could be relevant to physicians making decisions on drugs and so on. Put it all in an envelope, and on the outside of the envelope, write emergency envelope, your name and the date, and just have that somewhere really accessible. Make sure any of your loved ones or family members know where that envelope is. So if God forbid you have to get rushed to a hospital, you grab that envelope and take it with you. It's great to have everything electronic, and you can access a lot of this stuff on your phone. It's another great place to put it. But if you end up rushing to a hospital, if you can hand the admissions people or department an envelope that has all your health related documents, your drug listings, some information on your current health status, maybe even your insurance card information. It'll expedite the process and make it savior. It could even save your life. So create an emergency envelope. We talked previously about a will and revocable trust. There's a little more information here. And I redefined the terms, which we've already done, right? A will designates a personal representative, executor, executrix to manage your estate, marshal your assets, pay your bills, distribute assets. It names a guardian for minor child. Pour over wills the same. It just, instead of distributing assets to your designated heirs, it pours it into a revocable trust. And I explain why I think a revocable trust is a safer option, especially if you have health challenges. You need to look at your documents. You need to make sure they're current. You need to make sure they do what you need. You need to make sure the people listed remain appropriate. You want to make sure it's not too old. So let us wrap up our discussion. You want to take proactive steps to address your financial, tax, legal planning. You want to start with the foundation of a good financial plan. A budget is the key to doing a financial plan, a real budget, not made up numbers. If you automate your bill paying and your investments, you get everything on a computer program. We use Quicken. I'm not advocating that over other sources. Some of our kids use something called Mint. There's lots of options out there. It's incredibly powerful what automating does, and getting everything in one place can do to organize yourself. Get everything on your laptop, get it encrypted and backed up to the cloud. If you don't know how to do that stuff, hire a computer consultant. It's money well spent. It may be that you can do all that online. You don't have to go to a store. Consolidate and simplify all your financial accounts. The rule of thumb I suggest to people, unless you can state a legal or tax reason to have a separate account, then don't have it. You want the least number of accounts you need to do what you need. So you got to have a separate account if you have an IRA. You probably want a separate account if you have a pension that was rolled over from work. You don't need separate accounts to break up your IRA into 3 or 4 accounts for most people. There's some exceptions. If you have a revocable trust, you probably don't need accounts in your personal name. You can just have them in the trust name. The point is simplify, get copies of all your legal documents, do the wallet dump and the legal document dump. Get all your paperwork organized. If you're missing key legal documents, we've talked about most, not all of them. We've talked about how you go about getting them. You need to do so. And don't put this off. And a final point, if you get all hyped up and say, you know, I heard Marty, yes, I got to do all this stuff. I'm going to do it now, and I'm going to carve out this weekend. I'm going to get it all done. It'll never happen. Why don't you set realistic, easy goals for yourself? Start with this month, I'm going to get a financial plan together and a budget. Next month, I'm going to get everything put on my laptop, make sure it's secured and backed up to the cloud. The following month, I'll look at powers of attorney. And then the next month after that, I'm going to do healthcare documents. And the following month, I'll do my will and revocable trust. If you do things step by step, remember that the tortoise, not the hare, won the race. If you make it bite-sized pieces and you proceed to get it done, and you can use this PowerPoint as a checklist, you'll accomplish amazing things and make your life safer and easier, and frankly more enjoyable when a bump in the road comes. If you try to tackle it all at one time, it's just probably not realistic. So I hope that this has been useful and practical. The key is take charge of your life, take responsibility, do steps, get educated, and hopefully this program will serve as a starting point. Thank you. And do remember that the information on this program is for educational purposes only. You do need to hire advisors. And again, practically speaking, state laws differ and everybody's circumstances are different. So you need to make sure you tailor whatever you do for you. Thank you for joining.